would you do if your own brother stood up at your dad's birthday dinner and announced he was taking half your $10 million company because he needed it more than you? And your parents just sat there nodding like this was the most reasonable thing in the world. Well, that's exactly what happened to me, and what I did next changed everything. Picture this. It's my dad's 65th birthday dinner. The whole family's gathered around our old dining table, the same one where I used to do homework while my parents argued about bills in the kitchen. There's cake, there's laughter, there's that warm feeling you get when everyone you love is in one room. And then, my brother Ethan stands up. He's got this weird smile on his face, the kind that makes your stomach drop before your brain even processes what's happening. He clears his throat like he's about to give some heartfelt toast about Dad. Instead, he looks directly at me and says the words that would change everything. We've been talking as a family, and we've decided to give Sam's equity in her company to me. She doesn't really need it like I do. The room goes dead silent, like you could hear a pin drop silent. My fork is halfway to my mouth, and I'm just sitting there, frozen, trying to process what I just heard. My parents are nodding along like this is the most reasonable thing in the world. My sister Emma is looking anywhere but at me. And I'm thinking, did my brother just announce that he's taking ownership of the company I built? The company I've been bleeding for the past 6 years, at my dad's birthday dinner. But here's the thing that nobody at that table knew. This wasn't the first time someone tried to take something from me. It wasn't even close. Let me take you back to when I was 12 years old. Different house, different problems, but the same fighting spirit that would eventually build a $10 million agency. I'm sitting cross-legged on Mrs. Rodriguez's living room floor, surrounded by the guts of her ancient Dell computer. She's hovering over me, wringing her hands, because this computer has all her late husband's photos on it, and it won't turn on. The local repair shop quoted her $300 money she absolutely doesn't have. My mom had sent me over with a casserole because Mrs. Rodriguez just had surgery, and I overheard her crying on the phone to her daughter about losing those memories. So I asked if I could take a look. 3 hours later, I'm holding up a tiny piece of dust-covered RAM, and Mrs. Rodriguez is crying again. But this time, it's happy tears because her computer is humming back to life and there's her husband's smile filling the screen. She tries to pay me $50. I tell her to keep it and just buy me a Coke next time I mow her lawn. But what she gave me was worth so much more than money. She looked at me and said, "You've got to gift me, huh? Don't let anyone tell you different." That was the moment I realized I could fix things. Not just computers, but situations, problems. I could take something broken and make it work again. I started small. Kids at school would bring me their phones, their gaming systems. I'd watch YouTube tutorials until 2 in the morning learning about motherboards and software bugs. By the time I was 14, I had a reputation. If something was electronic and broken, you brought it to Sam. But even back then, I noticed something. When word got around about what I could do, suddenly everyone wanted to be involved. My brother would tell his friends it was our family business when he had never touched a screwdriver in his life. My parents would casually mention to neighbors that they had raised an entrepreneur while still expecting me to hand over most of what I earned to help with household bills. I didn't mind helping. That's not the point. The point is that when you build something with your own hands, when you solve problems that nobody else can solve, when you turn nothing into something people notice. And some of those people want to claim ownership of what you've created. At 12, I learned to fix broken things. At 32, sitting at my dad's birthday dinner, I was about to learn how to fix broken people. But first, I had to figure out how the hell we got here. Growing up, money was this constant shadow hanging over our house. Not poverty, exactly, but that exhausting middle-class struggle where you're always one unexpected bill away from disaster. My dad worked construction, my mom cleaned houses, and both of them came home every night looking like they'd been fighting a war they couldn't win. I remember being 8 years old and watching my mom count and recount $20 bills on the kitchen counter, trying to make the math work for groceries and rent. She didn't know I was watching from the doorway. but I saw her shoulders shake when the numbers didn't add up. That image is burned into my memory because it was the first time I understood that adults don't have all the answers. Sometimes they're just as scared as you are. Ethan and Emma dealt with it by pretending it wasn't happening. They'd ask for new shoes or want to go to movies with friends, and when mom said no, they'd throw these epic tantrums. But I started paying attention. I noticed which bills came in red envelopes. I learned that when dad got quiet at dinner, it meant work was slow. I figured out that when mom started clipping every coupon in the Sunday paper, we were having rice and beans for the rest of the week. By the time I hit high school, my little computer repair side hustle had grown into something bigger. Mrs. Rodriguez had told her friends who told their friends, and suddenly I had a waiting list of broken laptops and virus-infected desktops. But I kept thinking there has to be more to this than just fixing what's already broken. What if I could build something new? That's when I discovered web design. It started with the local pizza place Tony's. The owner, Mr. Carlucci, was this old-school Italian guy who still took orders with a pencil and paper. His son kept telling him he needed a website, but every quote he got was like $5,000. One day, I'm picking up dinner for my family, and I hear him complaining to another customer about how all these tech companies were trying to rip him off. I cleared my throat and said, "Mr. Carlucci, what if I told you I could build you a website for $500? He looked at me like I was speaking Martian. "You're, 16? You know about websites." "Give me 2 weeks," I said. "If you don't love it, you don't pay me." 2 weeks later, Tony's Pizza had the cleanest, most user-friendly website in town. Online ordering, photo gallery of their food, the works. Mr. Carlucci was so happy he paid me $700 instead of $5 and told every business owner he knew. Word spread fast in a small town. The bakery wanted a website. The auto repair shop needed one. The real estate agent who'd been struggling to compete with the big agencies downtown suddenly saw what a professional online presence could do. By my senior year, I was making more money than some adults I knew. But here's what nobody talks about when you're the kid who's good with money. Everyone assumes it belongs to the family. My parents never asked me to contribute to household expenses. They didn't have to. The guilt was built right into the dinner conversation. "Oh, if only we could afford to fix the roof before winter. I wish we could take a family vacation like the Johnsons, but times are tough." Meanwhile, I'm sitting there with $2,000 in a shoebox under my bed, feeling selfish for even thinking about keeping it. So I helped. I paid for groceries. I covered car repairs. I bought Ethan the expensive cleats he needed for soccer and Emma the prom dress she'd been crying about. And every time I handed over that money, my parents would smile and say, "What would we do without our responsible Sam, responsible Sam?" That became my identity. The one who could fix things, who could provide things, who could be counted on when everyone else fell short. College was supposed to be my escape, but even that got complicated. I got into State University with a partial scholarship and planned to study computer science. But on orientation day, I wandered into the wrong classroom and ended up in Marketing 101. The professor was talking about consumer psychology, about how to understand what people really want versus what they say they want. Something clicked. Technology was what I was good at, but marketing was how you make technology matter to people. I switched majors that week. That's where I met Jason. He was this quiet kid from Seattle who could code circles around anyone in the computer science program, but couldn't explain what his programs did if his life depended on it. I was in his intro to programming class trying to fulfill a requirement, and I kept asking questions that made the professor's eye twitch. But why would someone want to use this? How does this solve a real problem? What's the business application? After class, Jason came up to me and said, "You ask the right questions." We started studying together, then working on projects together. He'd build something incredible, and I'd figure out how to make people care about it. It was like we spoke two different languages, but somehow always understood each other perfectly. Junior year, everything changed. Dad had a heart attack. Not a major one, thank God, but enough to put him out of work for 3 months. Mom was already stretched thin with her cleaning jobs, and suddenly the family finances went from tight to critical. I was supposed to graduate that spring. Had my cap and gown ordered, already applied for jobs in Chicago and Denver. But when I looked at the numbers, when I saw how much my parents were struggling, there was really only one choice. I deferred graduation and took a year off to work full-time. I picked up every web design project I could find, took on consulting work for small businesses, even went back to doing computer repairs on weekends. I sent home $1,500 a month and told everyone it was temporary. That year taught me something crucial about myself. I wasn't just good at fixing problems or building websites. I was good at sacrifice. I was good at putting other people's needs ahead of my own dreams. I was good at being responsible, Sam. But it also taught me something else. While I was sending money home and watching my friends graduate without me, I realized that being good at sacrifice doesn't make you a hero. Sometimes, it just makes you a target. By the time I finally graduated a year later, Jason had already landed a job at a tech startup in Austin. We'd stayed in touch, and he kept telling me I was wasting my talents on small-town websites. "You think bigger than this," he'd say during our late-night phone calls. "Just, you see connections other people miss. You should be building something that matters." But I had responsibilities, family obligations. I couldn't just pack up and chase dreams when people were counting on me. Or so I thought. The wake-up call came ironically from my brother Ethan. I was visiting home after graduation, and he was complaining about his job at the grocery store. "I hate this place," he said. "I hate my manager. I hate the customers. I hate everything about it. I wish I could just start my own business like you did." "Like I did?" I asked. "Yeah, the website thing. That's not really work, right? It's just like playing on the computer." That's when I realized that to my family, everything I'd built looked easy because I made it look easy. They saw the money coming in, but they didn't see the 16-hour days. They saw the success, but they didn't see the 100 client emails I answered every week or the nights I spent learning new programming languages. They thought I was just naturally good at making money the same way some people are naturally good at basketball. But more than that, they thought what I did belonged to all of us. Because family shares everything, right? Because responsible Sam would always take care of everyone else first. That night, alone in my childhood bedroom, I made a decision that would change everything. I called Jason in Austin and told him I was ready to build something that mattered, something that was mine. I just had no idea how much that decision would cost me. So Jason and I decided to go for it. Not the smart way, not the safe way, but the only way that felt true to who we were becoming. We were going to build a digital marketing agency that actually understood small businesses, because we'd lived that struggle ourselves. The plan was simple. Jason would handle all the technical development, building custom tools and automation systems that big agencies charged Fortune 500 prices for. I'd handle everything else: sales, client relationships, strategy, operations. We'd start lean, prove the concept, then scale up. Simple plan, brutal execution. Jason found us space in this entrepreneurship incubator in Austin. And when I say space, I mean a corner of a shared office with 2 folding tables and the world's most uncomfortable chairs. But it had Wi-Fi, coffee, and the kind of energy that comes from being surrounded by other people crazy enough to bet everything on an idea. Those first 6 months were like nothing I'd ever experienced. We were working 18-hour days, 7 days a week. Jason would code until 3 in the morning, catch a few hours of sleep on the office couch, then wake up to find me already on my 3rd cup of coffee, cold calling potential clients. We had this system where every rejection got tallied on a whiteboard. Not to be negative, but to track our progress toward finding the right clients, because we knew that somewhere out there were business owners who needed exactly what we were building. We just had to find them. Rejection number 37 came from a marketing director who told me, and I quote, "You kids should stick to building websites for pizza places." Rejection number 42. hung up on me mid-sentence. Rejection number 48 told me to call back when I had real experience. By rejection number 50, I was starting to question everything. Maybe we were naive. Maybe we didn't understand the market as well as we thought. Maybe responsible Sam should have just taken that safe marketing job at the insurance company back home. But then I walked into Grind Coffee. It was this little cafe in East Austin, the kind of place where musicians and artists hung out between gigs. The owner, Marcus, was behind the counter, looking absolutely defeated while trying to figure out social media on his phone. I ordered a latte and casually asked how business was going. Marcus just started venting. The big coffee chains were moving into the neighborhood. His regular customers loved the place, but he couldn't figure out how to reach new people. He'd tried Facebook ads, but just burned through money with nothing to show for it. He'd hired a marketing consultant who charged him $3,000 to post generic content that got zero engagement. "I know there are people out there who would love this place," he said. "I just don't know how to find them." That's when I knew we'd found our first real client. I spent 2 hours in that cafe just listening to Marcus talk about his business. He wasn't trying to compete with Starbucks. He was trying to build community. He wanted to be the place where local artists displayed their work, where students studied for exams, where neighbors actually knew each other's names. But he didn't know how to communicate that story in a way that would bring people through the door. "What if I told you," I said, "that we could help you reach exactly those people? Not everyone, just the ones who are already looking for what you're offering." Marcus laughed. "Kid, I've heard that pitch before." "Give me 2 weeks," I said. "Let us run a small test campaign. If we don't bring you 20 new customers who become regulars, you don't pay us anything." That got his attention. Jason and I spent the next 2 weeks building the most targeted, authentic marketing campaign we'd ever created. We identified the local musicians, the graduate students, the young professionals who were tired of corporate coffee shops, but didn't know places like Grind existed. We created content that told Marcus's story, showcased the local artwork on his walls, highlighted the community events he hosted. The results were insane. Not just 20 new customers, but 87. And these weren't just one-time visitors. They were exactly the kind of people Marcus wanted to attract. Artists who started booking regular shows. Students who made Grind their study spot. Neighbors who started bringing friends. Marcus was so happy he paid us twice what we'd originally discussed, and immediately introduced us to 3 other local business owners who were facing similar challenges. Word started spreading through Austin's small business community, not through traditional marketing, but through the most powerful force in business: genuine results and personal recommendations. By month 8, we had 12 clients and were finally breaking even. By month 10, we were profitable. By month 12, we needed to hire our first employee. That's when reality hit. Growth requires capital, and we'd bootstrapped everything to that point. We needed office space, better equipment, money to hire talented people, and cash flow to handle bigger clients who paid net 30 instead of upfront. I knew exactly where to get it, but I also knew what it would cost me. I called my parents and explained what we were building. I showed them our client results, our revenue projections, our business plan, and then I asked them to invest $30,000 in exchange for a small equity stake in the company. The conversation started exactly how I expected it to. "Oh, honey, we're so proud of you. This is exactly the kind of opportunity we always knew you'd create." But then came the part I didn't see coming. "Of course we'll invest," my dad said. "But this should really be a family business. Don't you think Ethan's been struggling to find his direction? And Emma's always been good with people. Maybe they could come work for you." My stomach dropped. "Dad, this isn't the kind of business where you can just bring in family members. We need people with specific skills and experience." "But, Sam," my mom jumped in, "family is everything. And think about how much money you've put toward helping this family over the years. Isn't it time for the family to help you back?" That phrase, family is everything, would haunt me for the next 5 years. I took the money because we needed it to grow. But from that moment forward, Every business decision became a family discussion. Every hire had to be justified in terms of why we couldn't give that job to Ethan instead. Every successful month came with questions about when I was going to start paying dividends so the family could see some return on their investment. As if what I thought was a business transaction had become something much more complicated. I'd given my family ownership not just of company equity, but of my choices, my freedom, and my future. The saving grace was Nina Patel. Nina was this brilliant entrepreneur who'd already built and sold 2 companies by the time she was 35. She was mentoring startup founders through the incubator, and somehow I got matched with her for monthly check-ins. Our first meeting, she took one look at our setup and said, "Tell me about your equity structure." When I explained the family investment, Nina got this look on her face, not judgmental, just concerned. "Sam, I need to ask you something, and I want you to really think about your answer. When you make decisions about this company, who are you making them for?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, when you're deciding whether to take on a new client or hire someone or expand into a new market, are you thinking about what's best for the business? Or are you thinking about what your family will approve of?" I started to give her some automatic answer about how they were the same thing, but she held up her hand. "Here's what I've learned in 20 years of building companies," Nina said. "The moment you start making business decisions based on family dynamics instead of business logic, you're no longer running a company. You're managing a very expensive therapy session." Nina became my sounding board for everything. Not just business strategy, but the psychological complexity of building something while feeling responsible for everyone else's happiness. She'd been through her own version of family pressure and understood how guilt could become the most expensive overhead cost in your business. "The question isn't whether you love your family," she told me during one particularly difficult conversation. "The question is whether you're going to let loving your family destroy what you're building." I thought I understood what she meant. I thought I could balance family expectations with business needs. I had no idea how much harder it was about to get. 2 years later, we hit $1 million in annual recurring revenue. I remember the exact moment Jason and I realized we'd crossed that threshold. We were sitting in our new office, this beautiful space in downtown Austin with exposed brick walls and enough room for our team of 10. I was reviewing the quarterly numbers when I saw it. 1,200,000 in ARR, with a growth trajectory that had us on track to double that within 18 months. Jason looked up from his laptop and saw me staring at the screen. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong," I said. "We did it. We actually did it." We just sat there for a minute, letting it sink in. 3 years ago, we were tallying rejections on a whiteboard in a shared office space. Now, we had clients across 12 states, a team of brilliant people who believed in what we were building, and more opportunities than we could handle. That should have been the happiest moment of my entrepreneurial life. Instead, my phone rang. It was my mom. "Sam, honey, we need to talk. It's about Ethan." My brother had dropped out of college. Again. This was his third attempt at higher education, and according to my parents, it just wasn't working out for him. He was 24 years old and had never held a job for more than 6 months. But now he wanted to find himself and maybe explore entrepreneurship. He's really inspired by what you've built, my mom said. "And since he's family, and since we invested in your company, we thought it would be perfect if he came to work for you. He could learn the business from the ground up." I felt that familiar knot in my stomach, the one that had been there since the day I took their investment. "Mom, we're not really in a position to bring on someone without experience right now. We need people who can contribute immediately." "But Sam, he's your brother, and he needs direction. This could be so good for him." What she didn't say, but what I heard loud and clear, was that this could be so good for the family. Ethan living in Austin, working for the successful company, finally having a stable income that didn't require him to actually develop any skills or work ethic. The conversation went on for an hour. By the end, I'd somehow agreed to let Ethan come stay in my spare bedroom for a few weeks while he figured things out, just temporarily, just until he got on his feet. Ethan moved in 3 days later with 2 suitcases and a gaming setup that cost more than most people's cars. At first, it wasn't terrible. He was actually helpful around the apartment, and when he came to the office, he was polite to everyone and seemed genuinely interested in learning about the business. But learning about the business apparently meant sitting in on client meetings without contributing anything, asking for explanations of basic concepts that any intern would know, and offering suggestions that made it clear he didn't understand what we did. 3 weeks turned into 3 months. 3 months turned into 6. And somewhere along the way, Ethan stopped pretending he was there to learn and started acting like he was there to claim his inheritance. "I've been thinking," he said one night over dinner, "maybe I could head up business development. I'm really good with people, and I have some ideas about how we could expand." "What kind of ideas?" I asked. "Well, like what if we offered social media management? Everyone needs that. And what if we started doing events like corporate parties and stuff? I could totally run that division." I tried to explain that we weren't a social media management company or an event planning company. We were a digital marketing agency focused on data-driven strategy and custom automation. But Ethan had this way of nodding along and then suggesting the exact same thing 5 minutes later. The real problem wasn't Ethan's lack of understanding. The real problem was that my parents kept calling to check on his progress and asking when he was going to start getting a paycheck. "It's been 4 months, Sam. Don't you think it's time to make this official?" "Mom, he's not ready for an official role. He's still learning the basics." "But he's family, and we did invest $30,000 in this company. It seems like the least you could do is give your brother a job." That phrase, "the least you could do," became the soundtrack of every family conversation. The least I could do was hire Ethan. The least I could do was pay him a competitive salary. The least I could do was give him equity since he was contributing so much to the company's success. Except he wasn't contributing to the company's success. If anything, he was becoming a distraction. Jason started staying late at the office just to avoid the conversations about Ethan's role in the company. Our team members were polite but clearly confused about why this guy with no experience was sitting in on strategic planning meetings. And I was caught in the middle trying to run a growing business while managing family expectations that had nothing to do with business logic. The breaking point came during a client presentation that could have changed everything for us. We were pitching a major retail chain, the kind of client that would double our revenue and establish us as a serious player in the industry. Jason and I had spent weeks preparing building custom demos, crafting a strategy that would solve problems they didn't even know they had. Ethan insisted on coming to the meeting because it would be good experience for him to see how big deals get done. Everything was going perfectly. The clients were engaged, asking smart questions, clearly impressed with our approach. And then, during the Q&A section, Ethan decided to contribute. "You know what you guys should really consider," he said, leaning forward with the confidence of someone who had no idea what he was talking about. "Influencer marketing. Like, what if you got some Instagram people to promote your stores? That's where all the young customers are." The room went silent. This was a B2B industrial company selling heavy machinery to construction firms. Their customers weren't on Instagram looking for machinery recommendations from influencers. The client's marketing director raised an eyebrow. "I'm sorry, who are you again?" "I'm Ethan Sam's brother. I handle business development for the agency." I wanted to disappear. Jason looked like he was going to be sick. And the client suddenly seemed a lot less interested in working with us. We didn't get the contract. We didn't. That night, Jason came to my apartment and said the words that had been building for months. "Sam, we need to talk. And Ethan can't be part of this conversation." We went for a walk around the neighborhood and Jason laid out everything I'd been afraid to acknowledge. "Our mission is being hijacked," he said. "We started this company to help small businesses compete with the big guys. We wanted to build something meaningful, something that actually mattered. But now, half our conversations are about managing your family's expectations instead of serving our clients. He was right, and I knew it. But what was I supposed to do? I can't just kick my brother out, I said. My parents invested in this company. They're counting on me to help him. But what about our team? Jason asked. What about our clients? What about the business we've worked so hard to build? Are we supposed to sacrifice all of that because your family thinks Ethan deserves a job he hasn't earned? That question kept me awake for weeks, because the truth was, I was torn between two different versions of success. There was the version where I built something incredible and changed the industry, and maybe even got acquired by a big firm someday. And there was the version where I used what I'd built to take care of my family, to give Ethan the stability he'd never been able to create for himself, to prove that responsible Sam could always be counted on. But those two versions were starting to feel mutually exclusive. Nina noticed the change immediately during our next mentoring session. "You look exhausted," she said. "What's going on?" I told her everything. The family pressure, the failed client presentation, Jason's concerns about our mission getting hijacked. And Nina listened without judgment until I was finished. "Sam, can I ask you something? When you were 12 years old and you fixed Mrs. Rodriguez's computer, did you do it because you felt obligated to help her, or did you do it because you saw a problem you could solve?" "I did it because I wanted to help," I said. "Right, you did it because you're the kind of person who sees broken things and wants to fix them. But here's what I need you to understand. Your family isn't broken. They're just comfortable letting you carry the weight while they enjoy the benefits." She leaned forward and looked directly at me. "The question you need to ask yourself is this: are you building a company, or are you managing a very expensive family welfare program? Because you can't do both, not successfully." As I sat there in Nina's office looking out at the Austin skyline, I realized that everything I'd worked for was about to be tested, not by market competition, or economic downturns, or technological changes, but by the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. And I had no idea which version of myself was going to survive what came next. 6 months after that conversation with Nina, my dad turned 65. My mom had been planning this big birthday dinner for weeks, insisting that the whole family needed to be there to celebrate. "It's so important to Dad that we're all together," she kept saying, "especially now that you're doing so well with the business." I should have seen it coming. The way she kept emphasizing family business, the way Ethan had been asking more and more questions about company finances, the way my parents kept bringing up Ethan's future and making sure everyone's taken care of. But I was naive. I thought we were going to eat cake and listen to Dad's stories about the good old days. Instead, I walked into an ambush. Everyone was already seated when I arrived. Mom had set the table with her good china, the stuff that only came out for holidays and special occasions. Dad was at the head of the table wearing his best shirt and looking unusually formal. Emma was there with her boyfriend, both of them looking nervous. And Ethan was sitting across from my usual spot, wearing a suit I'd never seen before. "There's our successful entrepreneur," Dad said when I walked in. But something about his tone felt off. Too cheerful, too practiced. We made small talk through dinner. Dad's work stories, Mom's updates about the neighbors, Emma's plans for nursing school. Normal family stuff. But there was this undercurrent of tension, like everyone was waiting for something. After we finished eating, Mom brought out the birthday cake. We sang Happy Birthday. Dad blew out the candles and I started to relax. Maybe I'd been paranoid. Maybe this was just a normal family dinner after all. Then Ethan stood up. "Before we have cake," he said, "there's something we need to discuss as a family." My stomach dropped. That phrase, "as a family," had become a warning signal. "We've been doing a lot of thinking about the business," Ethan continued, and about what's fair for everyone involved. I looked around the table. My parents were nodding along like this was rehearsed. Emma was staring at her plate. This was definitely planned. The thing is, Ethan said, looking directly at me, I've been contributing to the company for almost a year now. I've been learning the business building relationships with clients, bringing new ideas to the table, but I don't have any official ownership stake. Ethan, I said carefully, we've talked about this. You're still learning. When you're ready for a formal role with real responsibilities, we can discuss compensation. But that's just it, my mom jumped in. He is ready. He's been working so hard, and it doesn't seem fair that he doesn't have any equity when he's contributing so much. I felt like I was in some alternate reality where up was down and failure was success. Contributing how exactly? I asked. Well, my dad said he's been representing the family's interests in the business. And since we invested $30,000, we think it's reasonable that Ethan should have a larger role in decision-making. That's when Ethan dropped the bomb. We've decided, he said, that it would be best for everyone if we transferred some of your equity to me. You don't really need it like I do. You're already successful. You're already making good money. But I need something to build my future on. The room went completely silent. I could hear the clock ticking on the wall, the sound of cars passing outside my own heartbeat in my ears. You've decided, I said slowly. As a family, my mom said. We've all talked about it, and we think this is the best solution for everyone. I looked around the table at these people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. My parents, who I'd been financially supporting for years. My brother, who'd been living in my apartment rent-free while contributing nothing of value to my business. My sister, who wouldn't even make eye contact. And what exactly are you proposing? I asked. Well, Ethan said, we think a 50-50 split would be fair. You keep half, I get half. We become equal partners. I started laughing. Not because anything was funny, but because the alternative was screaming. Equal partners, I repeated. In the company that I started, that I built, that I've been working 18-hour days to grow. Sam, don't be dramatic, my mom said. Family is everything. This is about taking care of each other. That's when I reached into my bag and pulled out the binder I'd brought. I'd been carrying it around for weeks, ever since Nina suggested I document exactly how much I'd invested in my family over the years. You want to talk about family? I said, opening the binder. Let's talk about family. I started reading every check I'd written, every expense I'd covered, every sacrifice I'd made. $2,000 for Ethan's car repair junior year of college. $1,500 for Emma's spring break trip. $500 for Mom's birthday present because Dad was between jobs. $3,000 to help with the mortgage when Dad hurt his back. The list went on for 10 minutes. By the time I finished, I documented over $47,000 that I'd given to the family over the past 8 years, not including the business investment they were now using to justify taking my company. That's not counting, I said, the year I delayed graduation to send money home. That's not counting the opportunities I turned down because I felt responsible for everyone else's financial stability. That's not counting the business I built that employs 10 people and generates over $1 million in revenue. The room was dead silent. But you're right, I continued. Family is everything. So let me ask you something. When exactly did this family start paying me back for all that support? When did anyone ask if I needed help with anything? When did anyone offer to invest in my dreams instead of just benefiting from my success? Sam, my dad started. That's different. You were helping family. That's what family does. No, I said. That's what I do. But apparently what the rest of this family does is wait for me to build something valuable and then figure out how to take it from me. That's when my mom played her trump card. We already spoke to a lawyer, she said. Since we're investors in the company, we have rights. And since Ethan has been working for the business, he deserves compensation. My heart stopped. They hadn't just planned this conversation. They'd taken legal action. What lawyer? I asked. Jim Morrison. my dad said. You remember Jim from church? He specializes in business law. I knew Jim Morrison. He was a decent guy who did wills and small business contracts for people in town. But he wasn't the kind of lawyer who handled complex equity disputes. And what exactly did Jim tell you? He said Ethan jumped in, that since the family invested in the business and I've been contributing my time and expertise, we have a strong case for demanding a larger ownership stake. I pulled out my phone and called Nina. She answered on the second ring. Nina, I need a favor. Can you conference in Sarah Chen? Sarah was Nina's lawyer, the one who'd helped her structure her previous companies. Within 5 minutes, we had her on speakerphone explaining to my family exactly how wrong Jim Morrison was. Based on what you've described, Sarah said, the original investment agreement gives your parents a small equity stake in exchange for their $30,000 investment. It does not give them the right to redistribute existing equity to other family members, and unpaid internship or volunteer work does not create automatic ownership rights, she continued. If Ethan believes he deserves compensation for work performed, he would need to document specific contributions and their measurable value to the business. But equity redistribution would require the consent of all existing shareholders, including the majority owner. The majority owner. That was me. My dad's face was turning red. But we're family. This should be a family decision. With respect, sir, Sarah said, family relationships don't override corporate law. The business is a separate legal entity with specific ownership structures. Those can't be changed unilaterally because of family dynamics. After Sarah hung up, we sat in silence for a long time. Finally, my mom spoke. I don't understand why you're being so selfish about this, Sam. We raised you. We supported you. We invested in your business when you needed help. Don't you think you owe us something? And that's when I said the words that had been building inside me for years. You want to know what I think? I think you've turned love into a transaction. I think you've kept a running tab of everything you've ever done for me, so you could cash it in when I became successful. And I think you've confused being supportive with being entitled to the results of my work. My voice was steady, but my hands were shaking. I spent my entire childhood believing that being a good daughter meant putting everyone else's needs ahead of my own. I delayed my education to send money home. I turned down opportunities because I felt guilty about leaving the family behind. I built a company while constantly worrying about whether I was being fair to everyone else. I looked at each of them. But you know what I've realized? None of you ever asked if I was okay. None of you ever worried about whether I was sacrificing too much. You just took what I gave and assumed there would always be more. Ethan started to say something, but I held up my hand. I'm not done. You want to know the difference between a family and a business. In a family, people support each other because they love each other. In a business, people contribute value and get compensated accordingly. But you've been treating our relationship like a business while demanding I treat it like a family. I closed the binder and stood up. So here's what's going to happen. Ethan, you have 2 weeks to find somewhere else to live and something else to do with your life. You're no longer welcome at my office or my apartment. Mom and Dad, your $30,000 investment gives you exactly what the legal documents say it gives you. Nothing more. And all of you need to understand that my success is not your inheritance. I picked up my bag and headed for the door. Where are you going? My mom called after me. I'm going home, I said, to the life I built, without asking anyone's permission. As I walked to my car, I could hear them arguing behind me, voices getting louder, accusations flying, the sound of my family falling apart. But for the first time in my adult life, I wasn't responsible for fixing it, and that felt like freedom. The next morning, I woke up in my apartment for the first time in months without that knot in my stomach. Ethan's gaming setup was gone. His clothes were gone. The constant tension of managing family expectations while trying to run a business was gone. It felt like I could breathe again. Nina called around 10 a.m. How are you holding up? Better than I expected, I said, but I think we need to restructure some things. I don't want this to happen again. I was hoping you'd say that. Can you come in today? Sarah and I have some ideas. 3 hours later, I was sitting in Nina's office learning about something called a holding company structure. Sarah had laid out documents across the conference table, like she was planning a military operation. Here's what we're going to do, Sarah explained. We're going to create a new entity called Tidewave Holdings. You'll transfer your personal ownership of the agency to Tidewave, and you'll be the sole owner and operator of Tidewave. This creates a legal buffer between your family's investment and your personal control of the business. Nina jumped in. Your parents still keep their equity stake in the original company exactly as agreed. But their stake doesn't give them any control over how you run Tidewave or what decisions you make about the business's future. And if anyone tries to claim they deserve more equity based on unpaid work or family contributions, I asked, they'd have to take it up with Tidewave Holdings, Sarah said with a smile. Good luck with that. The restructuring took 2 weeks to complete. During that time, something amazing happened at the office. Without the constant drama of family expectations, without Ethan sitting in on meetings where he added no value, without the pressure to make business decisions based on keeping everyone happy, our team started functioning like a real company again. Jason was the first to notice. It's like someone turned the music back on, he said during our Monday morning team meeting. People are actually excited about work again. He was right. Our project manager stopped looking stressed every time I walked into a room. Our designers started pitching creative ideas instead of playing it safe. Our account managers began pursuing bigger clients instead of wondering if they'd have to explain their strategies to someone with no experience. And then the wins started coming. First, we landed that retail client we'd lost when Ethan made his influencer marketing suggestion. They'd been watching our work with other companies and reached out to schedule a new meeting. This time, Jason and I went alone. This time, we got the contract. 2 weeks later, a healthcare company in Dallas hired us to completely rebuild their patient acquisition system. The project was worth 6 figures and would establish us as experts in a whole new industry. A month after that, a tech startup in San Francisco offered us a retainer that was bigger than our first year's total revenue. Our team grew from 10 people to 15. We moved into a bigger office space. We started turning down projects because we were booked solid for the next 6 months. But the biggest change wasn't in our revenue or our client list. It was in our culture. People started staying late because they wanted to, not because they felt obligated. They started bringing friends to company events. They started talking about our mission like they actually believed in it. Because for the first time since we'd started growing, our mission was actually ours again. 3 months after the birthday dinner disaster, my mom called. Sam, honey, we haven't talked in so long. I was wondering if maybe we could visit the office. See what you've built. Your father and I have been thinking, and we'd like to understand your business better. I almost said no. The wound was still fresh, and I wasn't sure I was ready to let them back into this part of my life. But Nina had been talking to me about the difference between boundaries and walls. Boundaries aren't about cutting people off, she'd said. They're about protecting what matters to you while still allowing for relationship. Walls keep everyone out. Boundaries let the right people in on the right terms. So I said yes, but I set conditions. You can visit the office, I told my mom. But this is a professional environment. You're coming as observers, not as advisors or stakeholders. And if there's any mention of equity or ownership or what anyone deserves, the visit ends immediately. They agreed. The day they came, I was nervous. But as I walked them through our office, introduced them to our team, showed them the work we were doing for clients across the country, something shifted. My parents weren't trying to insert themselves into conversations. They weren't questioning our decisions or suggesting improvements. They were just listening. Actually listening maybe for the first time in years. Jason gave them a demo of the automation platform he'd built. Our creative director showed them campaigns that had increased client revenues by 40%. Our newest hire, a brilliant strategist we'd recruited from a Fortune 500 company, explained how we were revolutionizing customer acquisition for mid-market businesses. By the time we finished the tour, my dad looked genuinely impressed. Not proud in that possessive way parents get when they want to claim credit for their kid's success. Just impressed by the actual work we were doing. "I had no idea," he said quietly. "I thought you were just doing websites and social media stuff. I didn't realize you were solving real problems for these companies." Before they left, Ethan asked if he could talk to me privately. We walked outside, and for a minute he just stood there looking uncomfortable. Finally, he said, "I owe you an apology. A real one." I waited. "I spent so much time thinking about what I deserved and what was fair for me that I never stopped to think about what you'd actually built. I was treating your company like it was just some family resource that I had a right to access." He paused, looking out at the Austin skyline. "The truth is, I've never built anything in my life. I've never stuck with anything long enough to see it through. And instead of dealing with that, I convinced myself that I was entitled to benefit from your success because we share DNA." This was the most honest conversation Ethan and I had ever had. "I don't want to take anything from you anymore," he continued, "but if you're ever willing to teach me how to actually contribute something valuable, how to earn my place instead of demanding it, I'd like to learn." "What does that look like to you?" I asked. "I don't know yet. Maybe I start with something small somewhere else and prove I can actually stick with it. Maybe I figure out what I'm actually good at instead of assuming I should be good at what you're good at." For the first time in years, I saw my brother as a person instead of a problem. "I think that's a really good place to start," I said. 6 months later, Ethan enrolled in a trade program to become an electrician. 6 months after that, he got his first real job and moved into his own apartment. He still calls sometimes to ask for advice, but now the advice is about work ethic and career development, not about what he thinks he deserves. My parents and I talk regularly now, but the dynamic is completely different. They ask about the business because they're genuinely curious, not because they're looking for ways to benefit from it. They offer support when I need it, but they don't assume I need it just because they want to feel useful. And Emma, who had been silent through most of the family drama, told me later that watching me set boundaries had inspired her to do the same thing in her own life. She stopped letting people take advantage of her natural tendency to help everyone else first. The company is now worth over $10 million. We have 42 employees across 3 offices. We've been featured in industry publications as one of the fastest growing agencies in the country. And most importantly, we're doing work that actually matters for clients who value what we bring to the table. But the real victory isn't the financial success or the industry recognition. The real victory is that I learned the difference between being responsible for people and being responsible to people. I'm responsible to my team to build something they can be proud of. I'm responsible to my clients to deliver results they can count on. I'm responsible to myself to protect what I've worked so hard to create. But I'm not responsible for my family's happiness, or their financial security, or their career satisfaction. I'm not responsible for managing their expectations, or making their dreams come true. I can love them without owing them my life's work. I can support them without sacrificing my own ambitions. I can be a good daughter and sister without being their personal insurance policy. The 12-year-old girl who fixed Mrs. Rodriguez's computer didn't do it because she felt guilty or obligated. She did it because she saw a problem she could solve and she wanted to help. That instinct to fix things, to build solutions, to turn broken situations into working systems, that's still at the core of everything I do. But now I get to choose which problems are mine to solve. Now I get to decide which broken things are worth my time and energy to fix. Boundaries don't mean cutting people off. They mean protecting what matters to you so you can show up fully for the people and projects that deserve your best. And sometimes, the most loving thing you can do for your family is to stop letting them treat your success as their inheritance. Because when you build something with your own hands, when you solve problems that nobody else can solve, when you turn nothing into something that something belongs to you, and you get to decide what to do with it, That's not selfishness. That's freedom. And freedom, it turns out, is the foundation for every other kind of success. What do you think about Sam's choice to set boundaries with her family? Have you ever had to choose between keeping the peace and protecting what you've built? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if stories like this resonate with you, hit that subscribe button for more real life drama that'll make you think twice about family success and knowing your worth.